Yes, that's kind of like that.
Okay. And how much time do you have to do that
Four
project?
months. Actually, 1 month, I guess. It's due to 12th of December. Uh, the deadline is 12th of December. I guess it's not too much time. We're actually on a rush right now. Yes. We're trying to do everything in a limited timeline. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of a compressed research timeline. But as you say, in 2 months you can already do quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what I can tell you from my perspective is there are always three things when you go into a research project. I
Hmm.
was trying to elaborate a bit in the email, but it's the question that you have, is the data that you have, and the methodology you can apply.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Uh,
the question, it helps that you already have a question, right? The data is, I mean, in my type of research is key because I mostly do empirical work, like the paper that you mentioned on the on tax fraud in the US during the Depression. And then the methodology depends a little bit on your question, right? If you're looking more at economics, then you will tend to run regressions or do some simulations. If you look more purely at the history, you will sort of collect views from different social groups, try
yeah.
to see who was most impacted, what was said at the time, the sort of context.
Yeah.
Um, and these three things evolve all the time. It's like you start with a question, then once you have an idea of the data in the local newspaper that you find, then maybe you'll refine a little bit the question. But it helps to have these things as clear as possible in your mind and like revisiting it. So yeah, and so I can tell you. So in my case, I had this question on the role of the Great Depression in changing the compliance with the tax system because it's really a crucial moment in the US, but overall in this movement where you move from you don't know much about people's ability to contribute to a tax system. And so most of the ways that people were being taxed at the time was on things that were very easy to observe,
Hmm.
like their house or they were limited financial transaction, but their equipment, their livestock, if they were farmers. And the system sort of breaks down at the time of the Great Depression, and it really moves to taxing revenues, through employers taxing the employees.
Hmm.
And so understanding how this happened was quite key. I already had some data that I had collected for another project on the value of houses and the taxes that were being paid. And I found this resources in some newspaper. I mean, actually, I found an article that mentioned it. So often that's how you go. Like you read some other papers from colleagues, and you see this original source. They had used some information. I went back to it and I found a bit more. So that local newspaper had so it was a report actually, not exactly in the newspaper,
Hmm.
mentioned the value of tax fraud in all of these cities in the US. It was very detailed and it had done
Yeah.
that over multiple years, a little bit before the depression and after. So I was able to see changes,
Hmm.
have some sort of reference group and then afterwards. And then the methodology is a bit um, simple in this case. That's an issue. I mean, that's something to consider. When you look at a global shock, everybody is affected in a way. So you can't really easily compare before, and you can't really take two groups and compare those that are affected versus those that are not. So you tend to try to control for observable characteristics. say, do you see any difference in the intensity of the response to the shock based on whether the cities were poor versus rich on average, whether there was an election going on or not. So it's not perfect, like it's still scientific, right? I remember that was one of your questions in your email, like we want something as scientific as possible. It is scientific, but it's not a pure, it's not a causal effect that you necessarily measure, right? You can't say for sure the Great Depression caused this, but you can say cities that had these characteristics were more affected.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, something to keep in mind. How do I try to measure the impact of things? And if I can't, how can I control, how can I, yeah, try to still say something that's useful?
Mm.
Having some theory in the back of your mind is helpful. So I think in your email you mentioned a few ideas, exports or value
Yes.
of property maybe. So those sounds good ideas.
Yeah. I think so. There are good ideas, but I'm kind of confused about the methodology part. Like, I didn't really get that part. What do we do in methodology, and what kind of techniques we use, or what we do in methodology? I'm kind of confusing here.
Yes, it depends on your approach, right? I can tell you as an economist how we do things. If you go to a historian or sociologist, they would do it differently. So in economics, we run regressions. We collect things that are, you know, quantifiable, like value. We assign values behind it,
Hmm.
and we try to isolate the effect of one variable on another variable. So in your case, we call that, I mean, the general term is an event study, right? You just look at what happened before the depression versus after.
Hmm.
That's one technique. And so a difference in difference is one way to do that, where you take one group that's less affected than another, you look at the difference before the depression, and then you look at the difference afterwards. You can also follow over time if you have more than two data points. You can there are various methods, and then you can also look at the distance to a border where you know there's a lot of trade going on. One
Yeah.
region will be more affected than the other. It really depends on the data you have at hand. So I can't tell you for sure, like this is what you should do, right? The methodology really has to be relevant for your context. Yeah. There are some cases where you have you know a lot about what has happened before the Great Depression, and you have limited information as to what happened right after the Depression. So most of your methodology will be, I don't know, constructing a hypothetical scenario of like if there were no Great Depression. Sometimes you have a lot of information only after the Great Depression, and so you try to reconstruct, you know, how different these groups were beforehand. Sometimes you have a lot of spatial information, so you use that. Um, the key is knowing the source of variation, right, in your data. Do you observe prices well? Do you observe quantities well? Do you observe, I don't know, the electorate, like who is in power, the political groups? Do you have a way to measure if the newspaper is right wing or left wing? It also depends on your interest. I can't. I mean, those. I'm just throwing some ideas. But there. That's the way. Typically, like you start and you look at the information you can find and you sort of refine it
Okay.
along the way. Um,
I got you. And we got some data actually. We are looking to those newspapers, and uh, there are not too much actually data, as I said in my email. So the news goes like there is a new tax and there is a new law. They talk about those new laws or design.
Mhm.
The government designed those taxes or designed those laws. They talk about those in economic parts and some export values, import values. They talk about this, and when you come to there are some prices like uh, let's say corn. How much is a corn in that time? They have it, but that doesn't really change, you know.
Mhm.
So, but there are some slogans like use local made products. They provoke it too much, and our data is kind of like that. Like we don't really have something to compare or some groups. You can't really say groups like uh,
Mhm.
farmers and industrial workers. Like yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of like that.
So what I would say is try to understand what is your data about, right? I'm assuming you're observing some newspaper.
Yes.
Are these business newspapers? Do you observe only a sample of them? How representative they are.
Hmm.
And one one thing to keep in mind is that you're observing, you're sitting, looking at this data, you're sitting in Turkey in like 1930.
Hmm.
The shock happened in the US, right? So you want to know what the transmission mechanisms are. This can affect the local economy, the domestic economy in Turkey
Okay.
through export, right? So you will see this in the quantity of export,
Yes.
prices of, you might see it in investment, right? For investment, although in 1930, it shouldn't be, too much of that, and it will take time.
Yeah.
The 1929 crisis in the US impacted Western Europe in 1932, 33, right?
Yeah.
Turkey probably even after that. And we don't, there's no rule of how much time you actually see it in the price of corn. Maybe it just never hit. So that's one transmission mechanism through the economy. You can probably also see it in ideas or in like editorials in this newspaper, protest, violent protest riots. That's something usually there is good information about, even back in the days. You can see it in, I don't know, speeches at the parliament. Usually
Yeah.
these things are well recorded. Like I send you also the paper on the trips to from Ataturk at the time. So you might see there are more trips in areas that we think might be more exposed. Number of American tourists coming. Uh,
I don't think so.
yeah, so, but yeah, you would want to think of how hypothetically you would see what type of evidence you're looking for of the impact of the depression in Turkey.
Hmm.
And then you look at the data, whether that's there or not. But keep in mind that, yeah, the shock is indirect and there's a time lag. And the paper that you're seeing, in economics, we're always extremely careful about the sample we are observing. Most of the time, you don't observe, every paper that was written in a period. You observe only a fraction of that, and that can influence what you see, right? if you look at a business newspaper, you're not expecting to see a political speech, right?
Yeah.
So that might change. Even the way these things are described also tend to be affected by where you read them.
Yeah.
So
And
if you're interested in how people like their views of the depression, uh, yeah, the journal in which it's published will influence this. I so consider that you can look at the I don't know what you maybe you can tell me right after like what you're where you're looking at. You said that the libraries, but you have primary sources when you look directly at the newspaper, and you have secondary sources, which would be historians' work or previous work that collected this information. It's often very useful to start with the secondary sources because
like,
they tell you what is available, any bias in the sample that I was describing. Uh,
yeah,
that's very useful to start there.
like what kind of secondary, what,
Uh, PhD thesis, report by a commerce association. Um, so in my field, I was looking at taxes and the Great Depression. I looked at there was a the paper the data that I used for that paper is from a tax collector at the time. He wrote a report, and when I searched for tax Great Depression in one of the libraries online, his work came up. There was an association of all the National Tax Association that was doing an annual conference every year, and you could read the summary of that conference and the
okay,
presentation by everybody. Um, so you have people at the time who wrote about it, and you also have historians today that might have looked at these questions.
okay.
There are some economic historians that are very famous for the Great Depressions.
Yes.
I'm forgetting his name now, but uh,
We can, we know some good
Fishback, I think is his name.
fishback.
Yes, and the data is online. Yeah, Price Fishback.
Okay.
Send that to you. Uh, Let me send.
Mhm. Okay.
Let me see. I also had collected some stuff at the time. Let's see if I find it. Um, Again, it's not going to be for Turkey, so I don't know how much it will help you, but
No, that's also okay.
uh, okay, so let me send you that, which I think is the data I use for that paper. Mm. Okay, I'm downloading it. So. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this it's I'm sending a few resources also for the contact looking at digital library.
Mhm.
So the archive.org is a really good one.
Yeah, I know this one.
And then you have HathiTrust, but this is US libraries.
Yeah, but
Uh,
maybe we can find
but
some.
it's you can still find things. It's I think it's the best place in terms of access to digital books. It was part of the Google project around like 2000. So they developed a machine even to like turn pages in books, and we're very systematic about having a whole collection of a library online. You can't always download the PDF in HathiTrust, but you can consult it online. You can sort of like go through the page.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, these are very helpful actually for us. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, and yeah, I don't know. Then it depends a little bit the direction. Maybe start there, see what
Mhm.
you can find, and then refine a bit what type of question is feasible to answer in 2 months or 1 month.
Yeah,
If you want to do it really on an economic variable, usually prices of goods, financial data, you might also see it very often in newspaper, even back
yeah,
at that time. The
yeah.
stock market. I mean, I don't know for Turkey really how.
It's the
Maybe
same.
as you say, price of commodities like price of wheat, corn, rice, these
Yeah,
things you might see.
we,
Uh, it's just a bit hard to interpret, right? Um,
yes, yes,
because as I said, this transmission mechanism, it takes time for it to come.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that I want to also talk about. After you collect the data and kind of do the report and write the article, we want to do some uh, like a questionnaire with teenagers. What about what they think about depression nowadays? Maybe
Uh-huh.
would be helpful for us. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I don't know how this will be related to your findings. It depends a little bit on that. If you write your research paper and it's all about the impact of the depression in the US on Turkey in the
Mhm.
1930s,
Mhm.
uh, then it's a historical exercise. If
Yeah.
you want to know how this still influences Turkey today, that's a different question, right?
Yeah.
One that's a bit harder to answer, but you could say, I don't know if perhaps it reduced inequality because it affected the more connected household,
Yeah.
and you still see it today in some regions. Although, but that's harder to prove, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, there is a literature on the impact of these shocks and how they still you can still see it today, right? I think I share with you like this one paper that I'm finishing, which is measuring the growth that you
Yeah.
observe during your lifetime and how this changes your view of the government.
Okay.
So yeah, it's plausible that there is still impact. And you also see that many of the crises are compared to the Great Depression, so it gives you a baseline to compare. So yeah, that would be helpful. I would probably say to wait a little bit what you focus the paper on before you think, so you can adjust the questionnaire in that way. But that could be a way to sort of bring a historical finding into the present.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
could be a
you.
good.
And that's yeah, that's sort of like this. And if you want have something to add, maybe like
Uh, I think no, but again, like thanks for contacting me. I think is I mean I didn't know about this. Is it only happening in Turkey or what? If you have any information on the type of competition, I'll be really curious.
hmm,
But yeah, I would say that's great. You'll see in research there are a lot of phases, right? There are moments where you're like scratching your head and thinking of the
mhm,
question, you're waiting to find enough data, and then suddenly it comes through, and you work really hard at the end.
yes,
So don't yeah, just be aware that things are not linear.
yes,
It, that's the exciting part, I guess.
yeah,
You always
kind of,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm a little bit less into research these days, but it's still something that I like most about research is like you
yes,
bit like an investigator, like a it's like trying to solve a crime. Like you just go around and try to look from different angles.
that's
So yeah, so I think like be creative, look at different things. I mean, it's in 2 months. To be honest, I would say you have to go a bit to the safe side, like try to see where you can find data or something where you can provide findings on quickly. Uh, and that should really, I think this should come first, and then that should tell you what type of question and methodology to apply. Um, Sometimes in research papers, there are more iterations. And if you see some resources, like I would say, like a key is to try to determine quickly whether it's relevant or not. Like if you go into these two websites, like HathiTrust and Archives,
mhm,
you might find 1,000 of results on your topic. Try to organize it a bit onto the ones that are relevant and those that you can dismiss quickly. It's a good skill
yeah,
to have. So yeah, look for the literature, look at the those digital libraries, and anything that is collecting information that's systematic that could help with your question. That would be good.
yeah, okay, thank
And
you.
worried about the methodology maybe at the end. I
Yeah,
mean, think about it, but you don't say, "Oh, this article or this data I doesn't fit the methodology I have in mind, so I don't look at it." Usually, the methodology has to adapt to your question and your
yeah,
data.
okay, so maybe after collecting more data, we can focus on methodology more, but right now it's not our priority, maybe.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Right. Thanks. And yeah, if you have I don't know, is there a link to that competition or something
Mm.
I can
Like
read,
what?
or is it something? No, I'm just just out of curiosity. Is there
Mm.
any website or somewhere I can learn about this competition to know?
It's
Because I know, like I do meet some students in Vietnam where I live, other places, so could
its
be.
name is this. I don't know if has an English website. It's
Uh-huh.
for
Okay.
Turkish students. It's based on Turkey, and
Okay.
they have like 10 subjects: chemistry, history, biology, physics. You do some project about this, and you send the project. It goes like that. And these are for only high school students, by the way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, only in Turkey. Yeah. Your students probably would not be able to count, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's great. Uh, I'll look at it.
That's
Well,
kind of,
thank you. Thank you to both of you.
yeah. Also, thank
That
you for your response, and this is really great for us too.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
no problem. Good luck, and yeah, let's stay in touch.
yeah,
Bye.
for you too.